John F. Kennedy was a US president, and but they sadly John F. Kennedy was assassinated. John F. Kennedy was a leader who stood for change. He was a president who stood for the weak, who stood for equality, who stood for justice. But sadly, as I have just said, he was assassinated, shot in the head. So sad. Other people who stood for change. So I'm getting a question here from UN. The guy is asking, hi, I'm a revolutionary and I love demonstrations and fighting for change and for human rights. What do I do to make myself a better revolutionary and a better change maker? So that's a very, very good question, and it shows that you are extra concerned about being a better revolutionary or a better change maker. And but my advice is simple: you seek or you sought after great change makers that ever lived, and it's easy in this age or times because through the internet you can access all the revolutionaries or all the change makers who ever lived in history of mankind through just accessing YouTube or TikTok or Facebook, Instagram. The videos of all the finest revolutionaries or change makers all over the world are easy to find or easy to access. All you need is bundles and Wi-Fi. Yeah? So some of the greatest change makers that I'll prescribe for you are people like Akina Mahatma Gandhi. But then Mahatma Gandhi was an Indian and was one of the greatest revolutionaries that ever lived. He used to mobilize, or he mobilized the biggest mass of people against Indian colonization. He used or he mobilized more than or almost a billion people to riot against colonization and oppression. He was pro peaceful means. He was one of the guys who led the biggest peaceful demonstration all over the world. So if you are a guy who loves peaceful demonstration, then Mahatma Gandhi is a guy you must watch, or you must find his videos on YouTube and subscribe and follow him and follow his philosophies and follow his ways. Other people are people like Martin Luther King, but then Martin Luther King was an American revolutionary or a guy who fought for against racism and for black man's power. So Martin Luther King lived in US and was assassinated in 1968. He stood for change until his death. So he was a very great guy, and if you're a religious man, Martin Luther King was a very, very great religious man, and he stood for religion and also stood for black man's power and against racism and against oppression. So another person who can perfect your revolutionary heart, or who can strengthen your revolutionary heart, is a person like Marcus Mosiah Garvey, a very famous man to Jamaicans and to Rastamans, because he was a Jamaican and he was a very, very bold man who stood against oppression and against the racism that was existing in his age. And in fact, that guy is idolized by a lot of people all over the world because of his stance and his points and his opinions. So that's a very, very great man to listen to if you are a Rastaman or a Jamaican or a guy who hates oppression. Another man, if you love, let's say for example, if you're a guy who loves comedy, a guy who stood for the weak and for against oppression, is
religion easily has the greatest bullshit story ever told. Think about it. Religion has actually convinced people that there's an invisible man. living in the sky, who watches everything you do, every minute of every day. And the invisible man has a special list of 10 things he does not want you to do. And if you do any of these 10 things, he has a special place full of fire and smoke and burning and torture and anguish, where he will send you to live and suffer and burn and choke and scream and cry forever and ever till the end of time. But he loves you.
The powers that controlled and ruled over the world. He used to point out the wickedness of the society and the world's powers through comedy. He used to put the most sophisticated issues that take the society in the simplest way through comedy. So George Carlin is a must to watch. Another guy who was a great revolutionary of the last century was John F. Kennedy, who was a US president, and by the sadly, John F. Kennedy was assassinated. John F. Kennedy was a leader who stood for change. He was a president who stood for the weak, who stood for equality, who stood for justice. But sadly, as I have just said, he was assassinated, shot in the head. So sad. Other people who stood for change and are very famous, and their videos are on YouTube, are people like Muhammad Ali, the boxer.
He was a great champion, or what?
Apart from boxing,
what would you like people to think about you when you go?
He stood for change. He stood for black man's oppression, against black man's oppression. He stood for change even when times got darker, and when he was persecuted for it. So Muhammad Ali
one pinch of concern. In the end, he mixed willingness with happiness. He added lots of faith.
Every platform he found, he stood for change and he stood for against oppression of the weak in the society. So other people like Stephen Bantu Biko, the South African, who stood for change even to the extent where he lost his life fighting for change. Stephen Bantu Biko was assassinated. People like Malcolm X are people you must watch. Malcolm X was perfect. A Muslim who stood for change even to an extent where he lost his life in 1965. So the list is very long, and please don't lose this chance to find yourself great revolutionaries of the past and those who made successful revolution movements. Don't lose the chance to search for them, because they are online. They are on YouTube. They are on TikTok. Their videos are still being peddled around. Their videos will motivate you in these times to be a great change maker and to imitate them and to be a salad of them all. You can take one point from this revolutionary guy. You can take another point from Mahatma Gandhi, another point from Malcolm X, another point from Muhammad Ali, another point from Martin Luther King, another point from George Carlin, and combine them all, and you become a compound of all the revolutionary of the past. Those revolutionaries who stood out, people like, as I said, John F. Kennedy. If you take his points, combine them with the points of Muhammad Ali, combine them with the points of Martin Luther King, combine with the points of or the opinions of Malcolm X, combine with the opinions of people like all those people I've mentioned. So the list is very long. And by the way, I like that question. Keep asking such questions. But I must say, to be a revolutionary, you must be ready for the worst. Because the greatest revolutionaries ended up in trouble. Some ended up sacrificing their lives for the masses or for a better society, a better community. So be ready for whatever comes. Just as people like Stephen Biko, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, John F. Kennedy, Muhammad Ali ended up paying with their lives for change. Some ended up being injected with poisonous poison or a poison that destroyed their bodies and made them weak even to do anything. People like Kina Malcolm X were shot on their chest. People like Martin Luther King was shot. People like Mahatma Gandhi was shot. People like John F. Kennedy was shot. So be ready for anything that comes as a revolutionary. And it's not an easy journey. So be ready for whatever comes. But please watch out or do your research on the greatest revolutionary minds that ever lived. The list I've given you, yours is to watch them and perfect their ways and study their ways, and you'll become a great change maker who will be remembered in the history of mankind just as they are still being remembered. Until next time, meditation is the channel.
This is not good work. If this is the best God can do, I am not impressed.